Let me show you what you get for $185 in Cuba. The month before, I scheduled a tour for Matanzas and a river boat ride. The tour was $15 online and then $80 in person, but here's what I got. Around 8:30 in the morning, I got picked up by the host, Sergio and Munoz. They told me a little bit about Varadero, and we drove past one of Al Capone's hideouts. It wasn't a house since he never lived there, but during Prohibition, apparently Cuba became one of his stash houses for alcohol and cash. Around 9 o'clock, we arrived at the Canimar River. It's on the river where I was the day before. And we cruised up and down the Canimar River. It was a really good time. Sergio was telling me that the river is mixed with some seawater. Sometimes there's jellyfish, tilapia, and other saltwater fish in there. The riverboat ride was cool. We were only out for about 20-25 minutes. To me, it wasn't really worth the $50, but they ended up taking a bunch of professional pictures and let me drive the boat, so I guess it's whatever. Next, we stopped at a rock quarry where people mine limestone. It's an economic way where people can build houses, but it's hard work. From my understanding, people don't need permission. They can just go in and dig it up. We stopped at the tallest part of the city called Montserrat, just like it is in Spain, after the monastery. In 1662, I found out that the English ruled Cuba for 6 months, but then it was shortly taken back by Spain. And on the top of that hill, there's a church that was built back in the late 1800s, but it was never rebuilt after it was destroyed. On the other side of the hill, there's an overlook for the Valley of Jamhuri. And then after sanctions were dropped between the US and Cuba, Obama sent a bunch of buffalo in 2018. Those also belong to the government, but you can see them in that valley. We got back in the car and we arrived at the Museum Provincial Matanzas, and the museum was shut down between 11 and 12 for electrical repairs. Inside the museum, there were a bunch of clocks. In another room, there was a bunch of weapons like bayonets, muskets, and swords. Some were from the 1700s, most from the 1800s. There was another display that had a bunch of things used for slaves. There were bones from one that were killed in quarries, and Cuba had a ton of slaves captured and taken to Cuba due to the sugarcane industry that was booming. First trains in Latin America were built in Cuba because of the sugar industry. We stopped at the fire station downtown and found out some interesting things. Cuban boys have to serve in the military, and some of them get lucky and they're able to be a firefighter, which counts as time served rather than serving in the military. When we got there, they were in the middle of a tour. They were letting school kids take turns dressing up, going down the pole. There was a memorial there for August 5th, 2022. 17 firefighters died at a petroleum refinery fire, which lasted 6 days. Firefighters got too close trying to shut down a tank, but an explosion occurred, killing all 17. We stopped at a couple of art centers and looked at some crazy sculptures and a really cool art gallery. One of the sculptures is of a woman suspended in midair by wooden planks, while a man stuck in some tube is attached to her, also suspended in the air, which they're connected at the cheek. At lunchtime, we stopped at Detalles and they had some really good fish fillet. Surprisingly enough, after the restaurant, Sergio took me back to Cueva Saturno, which is where I was the day before. But since it was hot as balls, I didn't mind getting back into the cool water. Once the tour was over, I walked back down to the beach. Since it was a nice day, I figured I'd get in the water. I hung out at the beach for a while and saw some guys kite surfing. It looked like a ton of fun. I was starting to get hungry, and since my dumb ass forgot to bring cash with me, I had to find somewhere that took a credit card. And I asked a bunch of different places, none of them accepted American credit cards, so I had to go back to Casa del Lamien. Figured I wanted some snacks after dinner, and when I went to go find some, I went to 3 different stores. One sold souvenirs and alcohol, they didn't accept credit cards. The other one sold formula and canned tomatoes, they didn't accept credit cards. And the last one sold rum and canned hash with peas and diapers, and they didn't take a card either. I was then later berated by the locals because they made fun of my ass because I didn't know all this, but that's like in Cuba.